when I read this comic, I can't help but imagine Kid Cudi just sending text after text after text to Kyle Higgins. Like, oh man, wouldn't it be dope if we had this, and we gotta make sure to have some of this in there, and oh, can you make sure that he says this? That'd be super cool if he said that right when this happens. Oh, and we gotta make sure to have lots of this. That would be so dope. And meanwhile, Kyle Higgins, the established and respected comics author, is just shrinking farther and farther behind his laptop. Like, oh yeah, I guess I can fit some of that in there, and maybe if I like squeeze this, then it'll be okay. But you want that? Oh, okay, we can probably do that. I'll just, whatever you want, Slugger. And that is the genesis of this steaming pile of neon garbage. Howdy, I'm Kurt Williams, and today we're talking about issue 2 of Moon Man by Kid Cudi, Kyle Higgins, and Marco Locati. I kinda trashed issue 1, but I gave issue 2 a fair chance. I went into it not expecting it to suck, but it's got all of the same problems, if not more problems, than issue 1. If you're not caught up, we're following this main character who is basically Kid Cudi if he was an astronaut. He and some other astronauts went up into space in the Fantastic Four themselves by getting blasted with cosmic rays or something, and now he's got superpowers that he doesn't understand. The subplot, or I guess what's turning into the main plot, is that he works for a company that's basically Amazon, and they have rockets now, and they don't treat their workers right, and there's riots going on. It's a whole thing. And this guy's brother is yelling at him for being basically a sellout and working for the corporate man who's keeping everybody else down, but meanwhile this guy is like, I just like flying rockets. In this issue, the main guy, whose name is Ramon, and all of his astronaut buddies who were also in the rocket at the time of the cosmic ray mishap, go on an episode of 60 Minutes and explain kind of what happened. It's mostly just an opportunity for good PR for Janus, which is the Amazon parallel in the story. But I think the main point of that whole scene, which takes up a good chunk of the first section of the issue, is to show that one of the fellow astronauts is kind of blatantly bad-mouthing the company. Also in this issue, we get a lot of Ramon trying out his powers, and that's really the biggest draw to this series as a whole, is this dude who got cosmic powers figuring out his super cool looking powers. Like, that's the eye candy of the story, and it's certainly important for a superhero origin story to show the experimentation and finding things out about your powers, but I don't know, it doesn't really stand out in the hall of superhero origin stories. Then we've got this scene with some Janus Corporation goons who are trying to take down a guy who was putting graffiti on one of their buildings, which is illegal. And we get to see Ramon using his powers again, which is, like I said before, visually pleasing. And then at the very end we get a big reveal, and just a warning, this is gonna be a spoiler, so if you don't want a spoiler, just skip ahead 30 seconds. The astronaut buddy who went on 60 Minutes and badmouthed Janus is found dead. Sounds like a juicy conspiracy to me. So all of the problems that I have with this series so far can really be boiled down to one thing, and that one thing is, it just feels kinda amateur. The dialogue packs no emotional punch. It's corny. The pacing is way too fast. There's never any time to really appreciate the drama of any moment. It's just one thing after another super fast. The transitions could be good, but they're kind of impeded by the art, which I'll say more about later. And the part of the concept that has the most potential to be really cool, the part where a guy went and got superpowers in space, is pushed so far onto the sidelines so that we can spend so much time talking about this half-hearted cliche critique of big corporations. And yeah, this corporation Janus has done some bad things in this story so far, but it's very surface level bad things. It really doesn't seem like there was any research put into how big corporations like this can somehow manage to avoid any kind of repercussions for ethical and even legal crimes. It's just big business bad! Also, none of the characters feel like well-rounded characters. They're just cliches. They're caricatures of types of people that we might recognize quickly, but we can't really connect with on a deeper level. So the story hasn't gotten any more engaging, the characters haven't gotten any more engaging. The progression of the narrative seems to be relatively appropriate, but I don't feel like the pacing of each issue makes sense. As for the art, Marco Locati has a definite style, and it's not a style that I prefer, but it is a style nonetheless that I'm sure plenty of other people like. The problem that I have with it is that it seems like he's going entirely for style, but he doesn't really have many foundations of the craft to rely on. Take a look at this first page here. The first thing that I noticed before I get into any of the details is that this is a mess. And it's a mess because of the layout of the panels. There's hard black lines around the panels, but there's also hard black lines that are the same consistency and similar thickness just in the panels. And most importantly, they're all overlapping. There's no gutter between the panels. And if you don't know what a gutter is, that's just the space in between panels. And that space is there for a reason. Those gutters help us subconsciously make the comic seem more linear. It makes each panel seem like its own moment in time. And there are pages in the issue where the panels are much more separated. It's cleaner and easier to look at, but I wouldn't really call those gutters. In fact, I've heard that if you submit your own art to Marvel Comics in particular and you've got black gutters instead of white gutters in between all of your panels, they won't even take your submission seriously. Because you need to show that you know why there are rules to follow before you can start breaking those rules. If you start breaking the rules, like making your gutters black, then it looks amateur, just like this issue. Another thing that makes this art confusing is that the perspective doesn't seem locked in, and this first panel on this page is a good example of that. Is the room on a tilt? It doesn't look like the most consistent tilt, and we have Ramon over in the corner who doesn't seem to be standing at the same angle as the other people. And then I don't know what's informing these composition choices. He's got half of the important information in this panel here outside the panel. This panel has a ton of dense word bubbles and we can't see any expressions on anybody's face, so we have no emotion to attach to these kind of intimidating word bubbles that most people wouldn't really want to read. I think it's really funny that we have a guy saying it's in all of our best interests that Janus looks good in the same panel as this portrait that makes her look like she is high out of her mind. Not to mention she's got a Lego haircut. And this is kind of just a style complaint, but I really don't like how geometric everybody's face looks. It's almost like Porygon is pretending to be a human. And it definitely doesn't lend itself to the portrayal of nuanced expressions. I really can't tell what these people are feeling other than obvious emotions that have no real depth to them. And you know what? I'm gonna stop complaining there. I feel like I've said enough. So to wrap all that up, I just don't believe in this project. I don't feel like they have a clear goal in mind, and if they do have a clear goal in mind, I don't feel like it's a very interesting goal. The best part about this comic is the cover. I like this font and I like the colors here. So if you want to have some cool comic covers on your wall, yeah, go ahead and buy it, but I cannot stand by the literary merit of this work. So I don't remember what I gave issue 1, but I guess I'm gonna give issue 2 like a high 5, maybe a 6 out of 10. It's bearable, I guess, but it feels like it should be such a bigger deal. It's Kid Cudi writing a comic, and it's just kind of a disappointment. So there you have it. I don't really like it. I might collect more issues. I don't know. They're coming out like every 2 months or something, so I might as well. And if you read it, why don't you tell me what you think about it?